Hello and happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of What Makes Your Favorite Church Music Tick. This is the weekly live show here inside the Latter day Musiversity um, Facebook group, and where each week I come here and analyze some fun church music. Always happy to take requests, always happy to hear your thoughts as we go. Last week we began analyzing Janice Cat Perry's famous primary song, I'm Trying to Be Like Jesus. And we looked at the structure and the text to really get an idea of the architecture of this song. And I left a few of our notes here. We talked through this whole thing here about the opening and the introduction, the verse, the bridge, and the chorus, about how the song is built to give you a real idea of the think of like Corinthian columns, these big pillars that hold up the structure. It's crucial to understand the structure in that way when looking at a piece of music and when writing your own arrangements, your own primary songs, your own scripture songs, whatever it is that you do with church music. It's really important to understand that big picture architecture. So we did that last week. If you missed it, it's in the feed here. You can find it, or it's also inside the Latter Day Musiversity smartphone app, which you can get for free. Just go to ldmusiversity.com. It'll show you how to get a free access to that app. It's on a shared platform called Learnistic, and Learnistic will send you an email with a download button and all that. Okay, so that's where you can find last week's. But now this week, since we've already looked at the structure, now we're going to go a little bit deeper and get into the harmony. And remember, the whole point of this is to help you as you are writing, to think of, oh, let's see, how did she make that sound? Why did she make that sound? And how can I, sort of keep a scrapbook or a toolbox of these harmonic tools so that as you're writing, you have more and more tricks and strategies and tactics to pull from to make your music very engaging, accessible, and the real goal, of course, is to help the congregation grow their testimony. And that can happen with powerful music. So, okay, let's dive in. All right, I'm trying to be like Jesus. We are in the key of B flat major. I think I got my piano on correctly. All right, so this little intro, we're in the key of B flat major. Now, as is done in most primary songs, we have these nice chords provided for us above and so on. And these are the point of these is to help a guitar player, if there's no piano, to help a guitar player be able to play excuse me, along. So some of them are extremely precise. Others of them are not super precise in like a crazy music theory nerd way, but they're close enough that if a guitar player played that chord, you would get the essence of the harmony. So we're going to go a little bit deeper and really be music nerds about it because we can understand even better when we do. So I'm going to use Roman numeral analysis as we go, but I'll try to make sure that I explain it in a way that if you're not familiar with Roman numerals, you can catch on. Okay. And as always, I'm trying to keep my eye on the comments. If you have a comment or a question, please be sure to drop it in the comments, and I'll keep my eye on that. All right, we're in the key of B flat major. Last time we looked at the structure, we have an introduction, we have a verse, which is a 8-measure verse in 2 halves. We then have a bridge section, which is 4 measures, and then we have a chorus, which is 8 measures in 4-measure halves. Okay, and we talked about those cadence points last time, which are the big sort of architectural pillars. Okay, so it makes sense that the opening chord of the piece would be a 1 chord, and it was probably also likely that the opening chord of the verse is a 1 chord. And in fact, it is. We have a B flat major chord here. I suppose there could be an instance where the opening chord of the verse is not a 1 chord, but it's pretty few and far between. Okay. So we start with the 1 chord. Then right away, we get an accidental. We get a note that does not belong to the key, this A flat. All right, what is this? Well, it's still a B flat major chord. We have the B flat, the D, the F, but now we have an A flat. This is a dominant 7 chord on the tonic note of the key, on the 1 chord, which is not usual. It's not a normal key. It doesn't fit the key signature. It's a dominant because of the sound of the chord. The A flat makes it a dominant 7 chord, which wants to resolve like that. Your ear kind of tells you where it goes. But it's resolving to this chord, which is E flat, but E flat is not the key we're in. We're in the key of B flat. So it's acting like it's 5-1, 5-1, but not in the 1. It's acting like it's 5-1 in E flat. And E flat in this key of B flat is the 4 chord. So we call this 5-7, the dominant, of 4, because it's the dominant of E flat. Okay? We won't go too much deeper on secondary dominants like these. If you'd like more information, there's some free lessons inside the Latter-day Musiversity app. I don't recall if I've yet covered secondary dominants in there. If not, I will soon. You can also check out musictheory.net for a little tutorial on secondaries like this. But basically what's happening is we're taking the 1 chord and we're putting a dominant 7th on it with this A flat, which makes it want to resolve to the E flat very strongly. Okay, because that A flat wants to go down to G with an E flat in the bass. So the 1 chord, the 5-7 of 4, and then I've got some stuff in the way, so I'll put it up here. We go to a 4 chord, but this 4 chord does not have the root in the bass. It has the 5th in the bass. Right? The chord is E flat, G, B flat. That would be root position, but since the B flat is in the bass, this is a 2nd inversion chord, and the goofy music nerd marking for that is 6-4. Okay, so this is a 4-6-4. Then, so look at this little tenor line. We go from A flat to G flat to F. That's a beautiful little line. She is not the first one to come up with that idea. It's used often in many different ways, but it's very strong. It gives it a sense of inevitability, arriving at this 1-6-4 chord. So it's another 1 chord, but it's in 2nd inversion because the B flat's not in the bass. And that's the clue that we're coming to a cadence, the 1-6-4. Okay, so we get the 1, the 5-7 of 4, which goes to a 4-6 right here, and then this E flat minor. Okay, this is one of those instances where that's all the guitar player needs, but it's actually not an E flat minor chord. It's really, if we build a snowman out of this, we get C, E flat, because this note is not a chord tone. It's a passing tone. The E flat is the chord tone. Then we get a G flat. Then we get a B flat on top. That is a half diminished chord. Like, what the heck is half diminished? There's a lesson on this in the Latter-day Musiversity app, the smartphone app, which you can get at ldmusiversity.com. It's totally free. And we talk about all the types of 7th chords. Major, 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 minor, 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 half diminished, and fully diminished. This is a half diminished chord because it has a diminished triad, C, E flat, G flat, and then a minor seventh on top. Okay, so it's that motion again from A flat, G, G flat, on the G flat. We get a dissonance which really wants to resolve to the F. Okay, that's the whole point, is to resolve to the F because that's the dominant sound of the key we're in. And we're always playing with this polarity of the 1 chord to the 5 chord and to the 1 chord to the 5 chord. That's really the crux of tonal music, is the tension between the 1 chord and the 5 chord. So to arrive at this start of a 5 chord, it's not quite the 5 chord yet, to take it in a chromatic way, which you see with these little green notes, the A flat to the G flat, it just makes the arrival at the dominant that much stronger, giving the dominant, the 5 chord, strong polarity, which then needs to jump back to the other polarity at the beginning of the verse. Okay, so in music harmony world, we like this because it really strengthens the difference between the dominant sound, the 5 chord, and the 1 sound, the 1 chord, the tonic sound. Okay, all right, so going back, we have 1 going to the 5/7 of 4, going to the 4 chord in the second inversion, going to, okay, what do we call this? Okay, this is really a borrowed chord. There's a whole type of harmony called borrowed harmony, or mode mixture is also another name for it. Basically, you're in a major key and you take something from the minor key. And in this case, you take the flat 6th scale degree. See, because in B flat major, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, and the 6th note, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the B flat minor, that note is lowered. Da, 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 da. G flat. So we borrow this flat 6th scale degree from the minor key, the parallel minor of B flat minor, and we implant it into the major key. Okay, that's where this G flat comes from. So this chord, if it did not have the G flat on it, it would be a regular 2 with a 7th on it, because the 2 chord is C minor. Okay, but because it has the flat 6th on it, it makes the chord half diminished, so we call it a 2 half diminished, which you just draw a circle and a line through it, 7. Okay, and it's one of the standard borrowed harmonies. The others are minor 4. I'll just make a list here for you. So minor 4, 2 diminished, triad, 2 half diminished, 7, the 7 fully diminished, 7, and the flat 6. Again, there's a lesson on these chords over in the Latter-day Musiversity app, which you can get for free at ldmusiversity.com if you want to learn some more. Okay, just a little intro to music harmony lessons in there. Okay, so I mean, already in 2 measures, we've gotten rather chromatic, right? This A flat in the first measure and this G flat in the second measure, all to arrive at the dominant with extra tension, with extra polarity. Okay, so here we get the 1 chord again, B flat, D, F, but the F is in the bass. That's why we call it 1, 6, 4. Then here we do get a 4 chord. We have some non-chord tones here, a little neighbor note to an escape tone, neighbor tone, escape tone. Again, there's a lesson on these, what we call non-chord tones, over in the Latter-day Musiversity app. Actually, I don't recall if I've recorded that one yet. If there's not one there now, there will be one soon. But you could also go to musictheory.net if you want to know more about that. And then, so 164 to 4, then down here we get our 5. Okay, but it's not quite a full satisfied 5 until here because of this alto line. See the B flat to the G, and then it finally resolves, and it's a full 5/7 here. Not 5/7, so there's no 7th, but B flat, G, A. Okay, so it's the sound of a suspension, even though technically it's not a suspension. To be a suspension, it would have to have another B flat over here that it came from to prepare it. But there's no preparation, so technically it's not a suspension. It would just be, gosh, since this has been whittled down to simplified piano part writing, it probably would have been presented as a suspension, but because there's no B flat right here, we could just call it an appoggiatura, I suppose, because this E flat leaps to the B flat, which is a non-chord tone, which leaps to another non-chord tone, which then finally resolves here. The point is, it doesn't resolve until the bitter end, and that's great because it means there's tension all the way. Okay, just that. We're going to go further, but just that is a good little harmony lesson all by itself. Okay, you know this song so well, but this is why the intro feels so satisfying. We get the regular 1 chord, that A flat, which doesn't belong, 5/7 4 to the 4 chord with the pedal B flat. Borrowed, that half diminished from the minor key, and then we finally get the 164. There's the resolution. But we've been waiting for that since the second chord of the piece. That second chord of the piece kind of took us out of context, and it doesn't resolve to the bitter end of the intro, and now we're ready to start the verse proper. Okay, very, very powerful harmonic opening. This kind of figure where you go to the 5/7 of 4, is often saved for a final cadence, a final phrase of something. You've heard arrangements done like this a million times. A lot of Mac Wilberg arrangements will end with something like this. A lot of pieces by Johann Sebastian Bach end like this, where it feels like it's finally resolved to the 1 chord at the end of the piece, but not wanting to be done yet. It goes to that A flat, 5/7 of 4. It's a very cadential kind of sound, like you would end a piece with. She starts the piece with that, which I think is interesting because it gives it a sense of finality, that this message we're trying to say is the final message, which, I'm trying to be like Jesus. Need we say more? Isn't that really what it's all about? So that's, I think there's a bit of correlation there between the harmony and the idea of the song that we're portraying, which is quite powerful. All right, let's dig in now to the harmony of the verse. I think we can go a bit quicker now because there's not as much chromaticism here. Okay, so we have a regular old 1 chord to start with on I'm Trying to Be. Then we get a pretty regular 5 chord, except the third of the chord is in the bass. So we call that a first inversion, 5/6. Then we get a pretty regular 4 chord, an E flat chord. But again, the E flat is not in the bass. The third of the chord is in the bass. So that would be a first inversion, 4/6. Then look, we get that same G flat happening that we had in the intro, which is nice. It adds some continuity. And this whole idea of borrowed harmony that I talked about here, it's very, very often used as what we call a predominant, meaning it happens right before the 5 chord. And that's what we're aiming at here. We're getting to the 5 chord. The full 5 chord isn't really here, but this 1-6-4 acts as a 5. It's sort of a delay. It's like a delayed trigger. Um, MacGyver would do these little delay trigger booby traps or bombs or whatever. This is sort of a delayed trigger harmony where it goes to the 1-6-4 and then kind of sidesteps to the 4 chord and then finally resolves to a full 5 chord here. Okay, but before it does all of that, it does the minor 4 chord again in first inversion. Okay, so but it's that borrowed lowered 6th scale degree from the borrowed harmony that we talked about before. Okay, then just like the intro, we pause on this 5, and it's almost the same because we get this same alto motion. Almost the same, very, very similar. And that's our half cadence, our halfway point, pausing on the 5 chord, which we talked about last week. Now it starts over, and the tune starts over, the same tune. Okay, so there's a parallel period, which we discussed what that was last week. And now, look, we get that A flat like we did in the intro. And, yeah, okay, so we go back to the 1 chord. Now we get the 1 chord with that dominant 7th on it, which, again, we call the 5-7 of 4 because it makes it a dominant of the 4 chord, which is what we go to next. 4 chord, and we have some non-chord tones here. Let's see, that one kind of acts like a suspension again, but in a similar way. Because we're simplified piano music, it's not quite a suspension, although you hear it from here. Anyway, that's a little more detailed than we need to get today. The point is, it's a 4 chord. Then we jump to, okay, we haven't had this chord yet. We haven't had a 6 chord. Now we get it, which is great. We're always looking for, as writers, as composers, as arrangers, as primary songwriters, we're looking for something fresh, right? We get a lot of freshness right at the top with all this chromatic stuff. We get a little bit of a different freshness with the G flat here. It's a 4 chord, not a 2 half diminished. Then we get this one again, which we didn't hear it up here, so that makes it a little bit fresh coming in here. Now down here, our freshness comes in. We haven't heard a 6 chord before in this piece, so that's nice. Then to that 1-6-4 again. This is that 1 chord, B flat D F, but the F is in the bass, so it's second inversion, 6-4. And this is that chord that makes it sound like you're about to resolve to the 5. And we do the same side step to the 4 chord that she did before, but instead of going to the 5, she doesn't do that. She goes to this D7 chord, which doesn't belong at all because it has an F sharp in it. That does not fit the key signature at all. And it has a dominant 7th on it. So this chord is really D, F sharp, A, C, which is a dominant 7 chord. But, so in other words, it's a 5. A 5 of what? Well, the sharp tells you. The third of the chord is the new, what we call leading tone. Okay, so the F sharp wants to resolve to the G. Oops. So that makes this the 5 of G minor. And the G minor in the key that we're in is, so we're in the key of, I totally mislabeled this chord up here. Whoops. That's a 2. Oh, why can't I get the wrong tool? I'm sorry. For some reason I was thinking in E flat major, not in B flat major. This is a 2 chord. This is a regular 2 chord. We've had this half diminished 2 chord up here, but now we get just a regular minor 2 chord. And here we get the 6. My mistake. I'm so sorry. So that means that this chord here, this D7, is the 5 of that G minor chord, and the G minor chord is the 6. So that means this chord is the 5 of 6. And as we talked about last week, there's a very important architectural reason that she did this, and it was to tip us over into the bridge. If it had ended on the B flat major chord, it would have felt like it was finished, but she's not finished. She wants to get into this little transition text. At times I'm tempted, right? We're trying to be like Jesus. We really are. We're following in his ways. We're trying to love as he did in all that we do and say. But at times, we're tempted to make a wrong choice. We try to listen as the still small voice whispers the answer, which is why it's the chorus. Love one another, right? So this little transition period, this bridge, we need to have a sense of inevitability that brings us to that bridge. And to do that, we get the dominant of the chord that begins the bridge. So this D7, which tips us into G minor. Okay, so we have a little slip into G minor. Now it's not a full G minor because the F sharps have now gone away. We only got one F sharp up here. Now we get back to F naturals. So you could try to analyze this as if you were in the key of G minor, but it doesn't make a ton of sense. I mean, it kind of does, but it's very slippery because, again, the F sharps have disappeared. Okay, so really what's happening is we tonicized, meaning we did the 5 of the 6 chord, but then that 6 chord goes to a D minor chord, which is in this key the minor 3. Then we go to a 4 chord. Then we go back to the minor 3. So we're kind of lost, like, minor 6, minor 3, 4 chord, back to minor 3, back to 4 chord. See, we're kind of stuck in a little broken record spot. Like, we're going in circles, which makes sense. At times I'm tempted to make a wrong choice. It's like a little spiral. Like, oh no, I'm in this mess, right? And then another minor 3 chord. Wow, that's a bunch in a row, right? Then we're finally spin out of it to a 2-7, to a 5-7, and now an inevitable return to the B flat major 1 chord. All right. So to make the bridge feel like we couldn't resist it, that we had to go to the bridge, she used the dominant 7 chord of the chord that starts the bridge, which in this case was the 6 chord. Then she stays kind of lost, toggling back and forth between the 3 chord and the 4 chord, the 3 chord and the 4 chord. Where are we going? We're not sure. We don't have F sharps. Okay. We're trying. Where are we going with this? How are we going to get out of this? We're not sure until we get the very clear 2, 5, 1. There's a very common progression, which gives us our footing back. 2, 5, 1. Ah, we got our footing. Then in the chorus, look, we've had this before, right? And oh, look, the G flat as well down there. Another A flat. So we're hearkening back to the introduction, right? Even with the tune. That's how the intro starts. So we get the 1 chord. We get the 5-7 of 4 again. We get that same 4 chord in second inversion. But then we get a complete 1 chord again. Then it sort of goes back through the motions of the 4, back to a 1. This time it's in first inversion because the B flat's not in the bass, the D is. Oh, now we get before we had a minor 2 in this kind of a phrase, but now we take that minor 2 and we made the E flat an E natural, which means now this chord is a dominant. The chord is C, E natural, G, B flat. Dominant 7. But dominant 7 of what? Well, the third of the chord is the key. The third of the chord is the new leading tone. E is the leading tone. to F. And F in the key we're in is the 5, which makes this chord the 5 of 5. Okay, anytime the 2 minor is made major, like this, we call it 5 of 5, which then goes to the 5, 7. The E flat comes back, which is the 7th, and we get another 1 chord. We resolve back to the 1. And then look, it goes through the same thing again. 5, 7 of 4, back to the 4, this is still in second inversion. Then we get the chord that was in the introduction, the 2 half diminished 7, and we get the same kind of 1, 6, 4, like the prequel to the 5 chord. Yeah, this is kind of an appoggiatura kind of a thing. So it really is a 5, 7 with a little slip of a G in there, and then the 1. Okay, with these little neighbor group suspensions. And then this little suspension. See, this is a real suspension because it was prepared by the G. It's a non-chord tone here, and then it steps to a chord tone. And we call it a 6-5 because it's a 6th above the bass, resolving to a 5th above the bass. This one would be a 4-3 suspension, and it was prepared, but it has this little extra note in the middle. So it's like a suspension group, 4, 2, 3 kind of thing. Okay, and that's the harmony of this piece. But it's very well done. Like there's enough repetition that we know it belongs to itself. But there's also enough freshness, and in this particular case, because you can have different types of freshness, it's a lot of the A flat. We get the secondary here. We get another A flat. We get the G flat. Those add this freshness with enough subtlety. Like this chord is subtly different. It's major instead of the minor one up here. That it's not boring. That we hear kind of the same music over again, but why play it the exact same way twice? You might as well keep it fresh, right? That's sort of Mozart's thing. That's sort of lots of composers' things. Why present the exact same music twice when you could present almost the same music? Like if you need to bring back the verse or if you need to bring back the main melody, let it have some development. Let it grow as the sort of the story of your text continues. You never hear the Force theme the same twice in Star Wars because Luke is growing. You hear it straight on the first time. Then he goes off into outer space with Obi-Wan Kenobi and goes to fight, and you hear the tune many times, but it's subtly different each time because the character is different each time. It's almost like how we go back to read the scriptures again. You know, you come back to the Book of Mormon a second, third, 10th, 20th, 30th time. It's the same thing, but you're different, and you get different things out of it. So, like the harmony of between your soul and the gospel continues to develop. That's exactly what's happening in this song. We take the same musical structure and we just add little subtle freshness to it so that it develops on its way. It just sort of evolves into something over time. And that's the real fun of harmony, helping people feel something and then taking them on a journey with those feelings by changing it subtly as we go. All right, we've hit our half hour. We went a little past our half hour, but that's okay. I'm glad you could be with me today as we dove into the second half of I'm Trying to Be Like Jesus. So we'll be back here again next Wednesday, same time, 12 o'clock Mountain Time. Hope you can invite some friends. We'd love to have them. If you have any thoughts or comments or requests, we had a request last week for He Sent His Son. So I think we'll do that next week, or part of it. That's a long one. We'll get through part of it next week. I look forward to seeing you then. Alrighty, take care and best of luck with your writing. If you need any help, feel free to reach out. We've got courses and workshops in the works, and we've got our Muse Evangelist group that meets every Friday where you can bring your music and I'll take a look at it. As a group, we work on it together to help you with whatever you're working on. And glad to be able to do that. And you can check out that group at museevangelist.com, and look forward to seeing you there. All right, have a great day. Take care, and we'll see you next time.